Well, hello there. Brent here with Bring Your Own Tools. On today's episode, if you want to see how we install this beautiful concrete overlay over an existing concrete slab, keep on watching. Let's start.
And just like any concrete overlay project, it starts with a concrete slab. And for our situation, we actually have an indoor pool that has a very large pool deck that is concrete that needs to be ground down properly. So we use a few diamond grinders to grind down and abrade the surface properly prior to applying our overlay. Now, I'm not going into too much detail on the grinding aspect of this project, mainly because of the fact that I personally didn't do it and was able to survive the Dust Bowl of 2021. Just make sure you wear a proper respirator if you do take on the concrete grinding yourself. But I will leave a link above to showcase a project that I did do my own concrete grinding for, same process, just larger scale.
Now, I know what you're telling yourself. Brent, I don't have a pool. Why do I need to do this project? Well, this project can be done in a multitude of applications, and just because you don't have a pool doesn't mean you can't take into account the fact that you can actually go over a concrete, a tile, plenty of other hard surfaces with this specific product and can completely transform it within a matter of a couple days. So keep that in mind and enjoy the show.
To ensure a proper bond between the existing concrete and the new concrete slab, you have to have a good primer. And the primer that we'll be using for this project is Flexibo by Walttools. Now, Walttools is the sponsor of this week's video, and they provided all of the materials for this entire project, which I'm extremely grateful for because this is a large-scale project. They're one of the leaders in the clubhouse when it comes to concrete overlays, and they have an amazing variety of materials and options to choose from. So please check out the link in the description of this video if you are interested in your own concrete overlay project. As for the application of this primer, it's extremely simple. All I had to do is take your standard paint roller, grab an extension rod, and start applying it to the concrete surface. Just make sure your concrete is as clean as possible at this point, and I vacuumed the entire surface to ensure we have as much dust off of this concrete slab as possible before applying this primer. The vast majority of the surface is going to be rolled, but if you have side corners and insets like that, please be sure to take a chip brush or some type of paintbrush and get into those grooves so you know for certain that there's a primer everywhere on this slab. This product dries out and sets up fairly quickly, and the one way to know that it's ready for your concrete overlay is if you touch it and it feels dry. It shouldn't be sticky or tacky when you're walking on it, so make sure you're accounting for that before you apply your overlay.
So now that we have everything primed, it's now time for the star of the show, which is our Over-Eze by Walttools. Now, this specific product is a stampable overlayment, which basically means that it's going to be more of a cement base. We pour it on, we let it dry for a little bit, and then we come back with some silicone stamps and stamp it out to make more of a natural texture. It's going to look awesome, it's going to look beautiful, but it's going to take some time and some work. Let's start mixing. Oh, and by the way, with the mixer is this mixer. I decided to pick up this bad boy because we have quite a few bags to actually mix up, and therefore having the proper tool for a large amount of mixing is always nice because you don't want to burn out your actual drill, right? Big boy.
With a drill like this, it really is extremely easy to mix up. Just make sure you're applying the appropriate amount of water to each bag. Each bag is 50 pounds and should have approximately 4.5 to 5 quarts of water per bag. For any type of cement mixing, I always highly suggest adding your water first and then your mix gradually. That will ensure that you have a perfectly smooth finish and there won't be any clumps at the bottom because you won't have any weird dry spots at the very bottom of your bucket. Because let's be honest, no one likes clumpy cement. Trust me. We pour the Over-Eze directly onto the concrete surface and gauge rake it across the cement slab. Now, this tool is called a gauge rake, and it basically allows you to adjust the depth of the material that you want applied to any floor surface. It has a depth range of as low as 1/8 of an inch to all the way up to 2 inches thick. For this project, we are setting it at 1/4 inch thick. That will provide a nice consistent look over the entire area and really completely change the outlook of this entire floor system. And if any of you thought I wasn't fashion forward enough for you, well, check out these beautiful spiked shoes. I mean, it just screams class, right? No, it doesn't. But they're perfect for concrete or epoxy work because you're able to maneuver and walk around this very wet and very messy cement without destroying your shoes, which is always very nice. And you're not making huge shoe marks in your overlay that you'd have to smooth out later. For tight-knit areas, I'm using some finishing trowels that are either 12 inches long or even 24 inches long to get nice smooth passes. However, this did take 2 days to pour, and instead of putting it into 2 separate sections, I'm just doing it in one fluid video section. But hopefully on your project you can do it all in one day. But the one thing we grabbed on the second day that really helped the entire process was one of these bad boys. This is called a bowl float, and if you've ever driven past a concrete crew where they're pouring a large slab of concrete, you've probably seen one of these. It's really nice because you're basically able to twist and turn the pole, which will transition the float from going up or down on one side or the other. That makes it really nice, and you're able to smooth out a very large section extremely quickly and easily. As for tight-knit corners like this, I just take my 12-inch finishing trowel and spread an even amount of the concrete overlay over the entire area. Just make sure you tape off any items that are protruding out of the concrete slab. As for holes or drains, I actually suggest applying a bit of silicone and taking something like an old plastic flower pot that you can just fold up and remove extremely easy. It makes life a little bit easier and is always appreciated. For your project, just keep in mind the fact that my surface is extremely unusual with different elevations and variations, so hopefully your existing concrete slab is fairly flat. This one wasn't, so the one thing you have to keep in mind is the fact that some areas might dry out a little bit faster than others. So watch out for that, because once it hardens, you're not going to be able to stamp anything on the surface. And the final thing to keep in mind with the bowl float is the fact that you don't have to go out and purchase this tool. You can easily rent this out at your tool rental store for under 25 bucks per day. Very nice and extremely handy for these types of projects.
Now, these are our silicone mats, which basically has an imprint of natural stone. And all we have to do is wait for that product to dry properly, let it stamp out, and then guess what? Pull it up, do the next section over and over and over again, and we will have an amazing looking finish in the end.
Now that our overlay is completely poured out, I go back to where we started, and as you can see, it should be a point where it's actually still soft, but no moisture and nothing is sticking to your hand when you touch the surface. I fill up a generic sprayer with True Impressions Liquid Release by Walttools. Now this is only being applied to the Over-Eze product itself, not the mats. Therefore, you're able to apply it directly to the surface, place your silicone mats down, and start tamping away. The tool that I have in my hands there is specifically called a tamper, and it basically applies even downward force onto the mats, and luckily with this tamper you're easily able to provide a lot of pressure, but an even amount of pressure over the entire mat. As you remove the mats, you should be seeing a clear impression of the silicone mat itself. If you don't, you can always put the mat down again and try and apply more surface pressure. And that's the real beauty of this type of pattern, because it's such a random ornate pattern, which basically allows you and gives you more opportunities to make a lot of mistakes along the way, because nothing has to be perfect. It is all a random pattern, and therefore applying the surface, if you don't like one section, turn the mat around, do another section. If you don't like a high spot there, go ahead and apply your roller. Now this roller is a silicone roller, and it basically acts as cleanup crew if you don't like a specific line, or if you prefer one section a little bit lower than the others. I highly suggest getting one of these because it really does make life a lot easier when it comes time to applying a bit more of the detail work in certain sections. Plus, it's a tool that basically acts as a magic eraser because it basically just erases all of your mistakes, and there will be a few mistakes, especially if it's your first time doing this. I did. There's mistakes, but guess what? The roller fixed it. Throughout this entire process, I also would highly suggest the fact that you don't take on this project alone. A second or even third helping hand makes wonders for this entire process, and whether it's applying the Over-Eze where someone is actually pouring, someone's mixing, and someone is spreading, or if you're stamping where you are stamping and someone's there with a helping hand to apply the next mat, is extremely helpful and something that I personally really appreciated on this project. As I noted earlier, you might have sections that dry out a little bit faster, and because we were next to a pool on this project, the section that was right next to the pool ledge was actually drying faster than the surrounding areas. Therefore, I went around the entire edge, stamped that section, and then we could proceed with the other sections once they were ready for the stamping process. As I noted earlier, this project did take 2 days to completely pour out the Over-Eze and stamp it, and this is the start of day 2. Just want to make sure no one tries to walk on the Over-Eze the day you pour it, because that will not work out well. If you do have a surface that butts up against a wall, the roller also does an amazing job at applying texture to those sections because you can't always get right up next to the wall with your mats. However, the roller really does a great job of getting right up next to those walls and apply a nice clean, even pattern in those specific sections. As you're laying down these mats, the one thing you do want to continuously think about is the fact that you want a nice overlap with all of these mats. They should be approximately 3 or 4 inches overlapping all of the edges, and therefore you're not tamping down those specific edges. You're not trying to bury those edges into the surface. You're just trying to apply the texture to the majority of the mat and then overlap those seams. Because if you try and bury those seams into the Over-Eze, it tends to show, and therefore you'll have to use the roller more often to fix all of those little seam areas. Keep that in mind. This entire process was quite a bit of work, but it was a fun process because you're basically just playing a big game of hot lava, as in the floor is lava and you can't touch it. Yeah, it's basically that. Just, you gotta put the mats down versus the cushions. Who else played hot lava as a kid? Let me know in the comments, or just let me know that this is something that's weird that me and my siblings did, and we'll go from there. It was fun in any case. Towards the end of the stamping process, we did find a few sections where it was a bit too soft for even the tamper. Therefore, I just applied a bit of hand pressure as well as roller pressure, and guess what? That was plenty for these sections. At this point, we let it dry overnight and come back the next morning and remove all of our prep and tape work. It might take a little time to do this, especially in certain areas, but as long as you applied that blue painter's tape everywhere where you don't want this product, it'll come up and provide a nice crisp line for your finished look. As for pigment, on this project we are using True Teak Antique Color Wash. This specific color is charcoal because we wanted more of a nice rustic gray look, and all you have to do is add a scoop of this into a bucket, add a gallon of water, and away you go. There are different dilutions you can apply, and depending on the amount of color that you want to add to the mix, you can make it darker or lighter. Just keep that in mind. Make sure the product is mixed thoroughly within your bucket, and once it is, away you go. You can apply it in a number of different ways, whether it's a watering can, a bucket, a super soaker, any way you so desire. But specifically, it's so nice because this product is extremely forgiving, and all you have to do is apply it to the floor and then use a broom to sweep it across the surface. Just make sure you wet down the surface significantly in order to have a nice cohesive look over the entire span. If you're pushing and all of a sudden it dries out on you, that means you don't have enough of the product on the floor, and therefore applying more of the product will actually make it more of a cohesive look in the end. Keep in mind that if it does dry out and you don't like the look, you can always wet the surface again, spread it around, and actually change the entire look if it's so desired. I let the coloring fully dry, and once it's fully dry, you can then proceed to finishing. For this finishing aspect, we are using a high-performance 2-part water-based urethane. This product is extremely durable, extremely waterproof, and perfect for a poolside. Just be sure to mix this product extremely thoroughly for at least 2 to 3 minutes in order to guarantee yourself you have a cohesive mix in the end. I reattached the lid because it's going to be a lot easier to control a 5-gallon bucket this way, and it has a nice little spout, as you can see. One thing you do want to pick up for this project is the proper roller. This roller is a 1/4-inch nap roller for adhesive and epoxy based products. Therefore, it's really easy to apply the product evenly on a flat surface, but the main thing is that it won't leave any type of fibers left like a normal paint roller would. At first I was just going to pour this finish on, but on second thought, it was a lot more efficient to spray it down evenly. That way you can control the amount that goes into each location, and there will be less puddles left behind in the end. This one decision alone actually saved a lot of time and energy and was way more efficient, which actually reduces the amount of waste overall with the finish if you're worried about making sure you don't run out of finish at the tail end of the project. One thing to keep in mind is that this was the first time that I was applying this product, and it is a water base which goes on milky but should dry clear. However, the one thing that I did realize at the tail end of this project is that you do not want any of this material to puddle if you want to remove all of the white haze associated with this finish. And as for the application process, the manufacturer highly recommends applying 2 coats of this finish. So we apply the first coat to the entire surface, let it dry for approximately 3 hours, and then go back and apply a second layer of finish. We apply the second layer just as we did the first, but the one thing we do with the second is we add a true grip to the mix. This is basically just a really fine particle base, which adds a bit of texture and grip strength to the surface in order to avoid slippage when you're on a wet surface, like a pool deck. Again, this is another nice point to have a helping hand because one of you can be spraying, the other one can be rolling, as well as cleaning up any additional overspray on the wall, on the drains, and so forth. But guess what? Once we have this second layer fully applied and dried out, we are done! I absolutely loved being a part of this project, not only because I loved the overall look and feel of this entire space now, but I learned so many new skills along the way. My passion in life is to help others learn how to build and create, but throughout that journey, I truly strive to learn as many new skills as I can as well. A huge thank you goes out to Walttools for all of their amazing support on this project. I couldn't have done this entire thing without them, and as you can see, this transformation is one of a kind, and that is what I call one beautiful, sexy beast. Oh yeah.